What's up, everyone? It's Benedict here, aka BHL Hudson. Welcome back to the BHL2 channel. Today, I'm not reviewing a movie, I'm not reviewing a show. I wanted to talk about a story that's been in the news and a certain Mr. Quentin Tarantino, who's been making the rounds for comments he made on the Bret Easton Ellis podcast. Now, I've had some thoughts on Tarantino for a while that I wanted to talk about. I feel like every now and then you just see a headline of Tarantino saying something vaguely kind of stupid. And I always think that's sort of a shame because I'm a big Tarantino fan, at least of his work. As a person, I don't particularly like him. I feel like I've mentioned this in videos before. Every new interview I see of him, it used to be like, oh, he's sort of quirky and eccentric and he's very excited about film, which there's something, a bit relatable about that as a film lover. But the more I see of him, the way in which he talks, the sort of self-importance he has sometimes, and some of his opinions, and some aspects of his personal life, I do not really care for the man. And that has only been exacerbated lately, especially in the past year or so, with some stuff he's been saying about movies specifically. So I'm not going to get into like anything super deep. I'm just going to talk about his takes on films, which I disagree with, or at least have some some questions about. But yeah, let's talk about this list of the best movies of the 21st century that he made. He also made some comments about Scorsese, about Paul Dano, and I also want to talk about his Dune thoughts about not watching it because it's a remake that was from a while ago. Just because I remember thinking at the time that's kind of fucking stupid. So anyway, let's talk about what Tarantino's been cooking up. Because on the Bret Easton Ellis podcast, he listed his 20 favorite films of the 21st century. I've got the list here thanks to Deadline. Let's go through this list. I mean, this is personal opinion. I don't have any objections, really. It's a subjective list. There are some things that I find a little strange, but at number 20, he's got West Side Story, the Spielberg one, which, okay, if you liked it that much, but there's a comment he made about Scorsese, which we'll get to in relation to this, which I think is strange. He's got Cabin Fever from his friend Eli Roth on there. It's his friend, I guess, fair enough. Moneyball, fair enough. Chocolate, Devil's Rejects, Passion of the Christ. I haven't seen those, fair enough. School of Rock, I guess it's kind of a charming pick for the top 20 list. I'll say Jackass the movie, that as well. Big Bad Wolves, haven't seen that. Battle Royale, he did his whole Battle Royale is a ripoff of the Hunger Game, or the Hunger Games is a ripoff of Battle Royale thing, which, yeah, I mean, that's not like a new observation. Again, sort of the way he talks, I guess this is just who he is. It makes it sound like he thinks he's come up with this crazy new thing. It's like, I mean, people have been saying that for forever. But yeah, and also on the note of like plagiarizing or taking stuff from people, as we'll talk about with the Dune thing, like in terms of originality, I just think it is a little funny that Quentin Tarantino, who has made a career off of, making pastiche films, like taking elements of films he likes and mashing them together into new films, is like this critical of like, she should be sued for everything she fucking has. Like, I don't know. I love Tarantino's movies. I love his work. It works for me personally. I don't think he is like a rip-off artist or anything, but as someone who obviously borrows and homages, for him to be the one coming out this hard against people, taking ideas from other films, I just think it's a little funny, but fair enough. Midnight in Paris, Shaun of the Dead, Fury Road. We'll talk about Fury Road again when we talk about his remake Dune thing. Unstoppable, the Tony Scott movie. I have not seen this. My friend Freddie has, and he says it is like the middest of movies. So it's just funny that it's in his top 10 of the century. Zodiac, There Will Be Blood. We'll talk about his Paul Dano remarks. Dunkirk, sure. Lost in Translation, sure. Toy Story 3 at number 2. I don't know if it stuck with you that much, I suppose. And then Black Hawk Down at number 1. I think that is a very odd choice for best film of the century so far. I think Black Hawk Down is like a fine movie. It's an okay war movie. He compares it to Apocalypse Now here, which I just think is absurd. Apocalypse Now is like an actual masterpiece of craft and filmmaking. It's visually stunning. It's, tense and emotional. And Black Hawk Down is like a pretty okay war movie. Honestly, a little offensive in my opinion, but we can talk about that some other time. But yeah, some of these takes, again, I guess it's subjective. I just find it interesting that someone who's made such great cinema, who's made like real art, in my opinion, has some of these takes. I think it's just funny. His film friends are like Eli Roth and Robert Rodriguez and these kind of people who from the films of theirs that I've seen, they are not close to the level of Tarantino in terms of actual ability to make great films. So I just think it's funny that he surrounds himself with these people whose films he presumably watches and really loves. I mean, Eli Roth, his movie's on here and he's worked with them on films. I don't know. Sometimes I just think like Quentin Tarantino, he just has some kind of like, not lucky, but like he has like a film gene that means like he can actually make like excellent, amazing films, because everything else about him indicates that he would not make great movies. Like his taste in movies, the way he talks about movies, his other, the people he surrounds himself with, other filmmakers, it would indicate to me that he would not be like one of the greatest directors of all time. I just think that's interesting. But let's dive into some of his comments here. First of all, on Paul Dano, when he was talking about There Will Be Blood, this was kind of surprising. And on the one hand, I do sort of appreciate when a person in the film industry is not all like wishy-washy, like, oh, I love this person, I love that person, I love everyone. You basically get no real opinions out of them. I kind of respect it when people who work in film say like, yeah, I didn't like that movie, or I didn't think he was good in that. I think that's kind of cool. But at the same time, though, this one is both like seemingly a little bit mean-spirited and also, I would just say wrong, in my opinion. But yeah, he said here, let me pull up the quote here. There Will Be Blood would stand a good chance of being number 1 or 2 if it didn't have a big giant flaw in it, and the flaw is Paul Dano. Obviously, it's supposed to be a two-hander, but it's also drastically obvious that it's not a two-hander. Dano is weak sauce man. He is the weak sister. Austin Butler would have been wonderful in that role. He's just such a weak, uninteresting guy. The weakest fucking actor in SAG. Laughs. I think there was also another... Where was this? There was another quote here. This is on Lad Bible. Yeah, Ellis said that any actor would find it impossible to match Daniel Day-Lewis's performance in the film, for which he won Best Actor that year, but Tarantino would not let up in his criticism of Dano. So you put him with the weakest male actor in SAG, the limpest dick in the world. I'm not saying he's giving a terrible performance. I'm saying he's giving a non-entity performance. Now, first of all, I have not heard the audio, so, obviously the intonation can indicate how much of it is, like, kind of joking, tongue-in-cheek. It doesn't sound super joking. This is also, though, how he talks. Like, he talks about, like, the biggest limp dick or whatever. He throws out these superlatives. He gets excited when he's talking about film, which, again, I can sort of appreciate or relate to a little bit. So, yeah, I mean, the mean-spiritedness of it, it is what it is. Maybe he's trying to be funny or whatever he's doing, his Tarantino thing. The actual opinion, though, I find very odd. Paul Dano's, an excellent actor in general, so to call him, like, the weakest actor in SAG is pretty crazy. I know that's, like, an exaggeration, presumably, but, like, kind of a wild statement to make. And in There Will Be Blood, I don't think he is Daniel Day-Lewis in There Will Be Blood, which is, like, one of the greatest performances of all time, which is what Easton Ellis was saying. But he's pretty fucking great. I don't know, to call it it's a pretty memorable performance, like... To call it a non-entity performance. I remember lines and line deliveries and like his body language in certain scenes. It's quite a physical performance at times. It fits the movie really well. I think it's just like a kind of a crazy take again for, an excellent director, someone who's worked with the best actors in the world. And yeah, even if you didn't love him in There Will Be Blood, which I guess, if you're comparing it to Daniel Day-Lewis, I guess I can kind of see, to like lambast his just work as an actor, or his ability as an actor, when he's been consistently great in lots of films. I don't know if the implication maybe is less about his acting ability and more about like his acting persona, because he does play like weak, gets beat up, characters, limp dick, I guess you could call them, in a lot of movies. So I guess, is that what he means by like weak, the weakest actor, this kind of stuff? Like he is not a presence. But then again, I think that works for There Will Be Blood. I don't think you want, what do you want, like fucking Dwayne Johnson in the role? Like, I don't know. I think he pulls that off, and he's not weak in that film, but I don't know, the exposing that Daniel Day-Lewis does of him, or the one-upping of him that he gets at the end, and where he is sort of cowering and in the face of Daniel Day-Lewis. I think that works for the film. I don't know. So if he's insulting his ability as an actor just generally, I don't really think that's fair. And if he's insulting like his acting style and persona and the kind of characters he plays wasn't right for There Will Be Blood, I also don't think that's giving him enough credit for like what he's able to do with that role, and also the way his like acting persona, or what he usually plays into that film. I don't know. I think that's kind of a goofy take. I think that's a wacky take from Quentin. Also Paul Dano, man, just catching strays. He seems like a cool guy. There's no need. Then now this was another thing, the Scorsese take. Let me find Scorsese in here. Yeah, this is from the Variety article about, he's talking about Hunger Games or whatever, Battle Royale. Elsewhere in the podcast, Tarantino praised number 20 pick West Side Story for being the movie that revitalized Spielberg as a filmmaker. Tarantino added, "This is the one where Steven shows he still has it. I don't think Scorsese has made a film this exciting this century." Now again, opinion, it is what it is. But crazy opinion, fucking like borderline stupid opinion. I mean, like, okay, first of all, did West Side Story revitalize Spielberg's career? He made The Fabelmans since then, which is good. It's a good movie. But I don't think that's like started the Spielberg renaissance. I don't want to pick him apart too much, and he's talking a conversation. It is what it is. West Side Story, I like West Side Story. I think it's pretty good. To get that much out of it, I don't know. I personally did not. But it is, if that's what you have, if that's what it did for you, you know, fair enough. But to say Scorsese hasn't made a film that exciting this century, wild take. I would argue, I think you could argue basically all of Scorsese's movies this century have been at least as good or as exciting as West Side Story. I don't really know what he means by exciting specifically, if it's, because West Side Story is a remake as well. Like, it's not like a blazing new original idea. It was done pretty well by Spielberg, but exciting, like, I don't know. Because you look at, what has Scorsese done this century? Gangs of New York, which I think is like one of the weakest Scorsese films. Sure, okay, we'll put that one aside. The Aviator, I think it's okay. I think it's pretty good. I think it's about as good or as exciting as West Side Story. The Departed, it's one of the greatest films of all time. Incredibly exciting, incredibly well written, amazing performances. In my opinion, infinitely more exciting and better than West Side Story. What do you have? Shutter Island. I think Shutter Island is great. Hugo, I guess I'm not crazy about Hugo. You know, we can put that to one side. Wolf of Wall Street is, a crazy, fun, wild movie. And also, talking about, like, exciting movies, especially for someone like Quentin Tarantino, who's all about fucking, debauchery and exploitation movies and all this kind of shit in his films. You don't think Wolf of Wall Street is more exciting than West Side Story? I don't know, personal opinion, I guess. And then, like, Silence and The Irishman and Killers of the Flower Moon, I guess you could argue those are more, like, pensive movies, especially Silence, like, more thought-provoking, slow movies. I would still say they're better than West Side Story, personally, and I think if West Side Story excites you by, like, the filmmaking on display or whatever, I think Silence is a brilliantly made film. I don't know. It's hard to pick apart exactly what he means by exciting and revitalized and all that. I just think, in general, crazy take. And again, Scorsese. Why is Scorsese catching us straight here? I kind of like that you're just shooting from the hip. But I just think, like, if you thought about that for 2 seconds, you don't think The Departed is a more exciting, worthy film than West Side Story? I guess he doesn't, but I think that's kind of crazy. And then, okay, lastly here, this is unrelated, but I was like, you know what? And by the way, while we're talking Tarantino fucking cooked takes, all this shit he said about Dune and also fucking Joker 2, man. Yeah, let's talk about this shit. So this is from The Hollywood Reporter last year. Quentin Tarantino has no interest in watching Dune or Shogun. I don't need to see that story again. The Oscar winner was recently asked on the Bret Easton Ellis podcast, blah, 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 about seeing Dune, I guess. He said, "I saw David Lynch's Dune a couple times. I don't need to see that story again. I don't need to see spice worms. I don't need to see a movie that says the word spice so dramatically. It's one after another of this remake and that remake. People ask, have you seen Dune? Have you seen Ripley? Have you seen Shogun? I'm like, no. Blah, blah, blah about Ripley and Shogun and how, remakes, whatever. Before we get into the Joker 2 element of this, his point about Dune, I just think, again, is like, falls apart upon like any sort of poking at it or scrutiny. I guess his point is that he's seen the Lynch Dune, and also I think somewhere else, I could be wrong about this, he said he's read Dune as well, like he knows that story. But I think that's the difference in taking the book thing out of it for a second, because, you adapt books to films. I mean, like, Jackie Brown is based on a book, isn't it? Or loosely based on a book? Putting that aside, just in terms of, like, remaking films, the difference between the Lynch Dune and the Villeneuve Dune is, like, fucking, out of this world. West Side Story, which, by the way, is based on a Broadway play or something, right? And that in turn is based on Romeo and Juliet. So that's another fucking, like, you've seen this story before. That's a fucking remake. The Spielberg West Side Story movie is a remake. Like, what are you talking about? Sometimes I feel like he just talks to hear himself talk, or just like he comes up with something he thinks sounds interesting, or like, yeah, like he's on another movie level or whatever. But like, I would argue there is much more difference between the Villeneuve Dune and the Lynch Dune. Not in terms of story, I guess, but in terms of technical progression and what it does with the material. It's different enough. I think it's more different than the Spielberg West Side Story is to the original West Side Story. I think it's about as different as like Mad Max Fury Road is to Mad Max. Obviously, those are different actual stories. And I guess if his point here is that you've seen the like plot before, you know the beats of what's going to happen. But again, your fucking movie's number 20 is West Side Story, bro. What are you talking about? Like, I don't know. Maybe he changed his opinion. This was last year. I don't fucking know. But I just thought this is such a dumb, like, trying to seem interesting take, which again, you're Quentin Tarantino. Why are you like doing these like hipster, why do you feel the need to do this? I guess it's just how he feels, but I just think it's a silly opinion. You do not have the same experience with Dune watching the Lynch movie as you do with the Villeneuve one. I can't speak for Ripley or Shogun because I have not engaged with the like original material, or, you know, the new stuff with Ripley especially, but like, yeah, I just think it's kind of goofy. That's just dumb. I don't know. And then also just, of course, like, he doesn't give a shit about Dune. He doesn't want to watch Dune or whatever. Paul Dano fucking sucks, whatever it is. But he loves the movie Joker too, which again just feels so much like I'm trying to be different kind of thing. Here in this Hollywood Reporter article, it appears Tarantino may be going against the status quo, as he also shared on the podcast that he actually enjoyed another movie this year, Todd Phillips' Joker Folie à Deux. However, the Joker sequel was a disaster at the box office and among critics. Quote, I really, really liked it. Really. A lot. Like, tremendously. And I went to see it expecting to be impressed by the filmmaking. But I thought it was going to be an arm's-length intellectual exercise that ultimately I wouldn't think worked like a movie, but that I would appreciate it for what it is. And I'm just nihilistic enough to kind of enjoy a movie that doesn't quite work as a movie. That's like a big, giant mess to some degree. And I didn't find it an intellectual exercise. I really got caught up in it. I really liked the musical sequences. I got really caught up. I thought the more banal the songs were, the better they were. Again, you know, it's his opinion. I can't fault him for having an opinion, but I just think it's a fucking stupid opinion. Like, I can't, don't quote me on this, but I feel like I saw somewhere else he said something about like how Todd Phillips was like the Joker because he made a movie that went against the grain and whatever. And again, I just feel like that's sort of a thing you thought sounded cool to say. Because if you think about, okay, he went against the grain and made like a shitty, bad movie that like commercially and critically flopped and, you know, in my opinion, fucking sucked and was boring. I guess, you know, fair enough. Like, I guess I liked Megalopolis because I thought it was interesting how weird of a mess it was. Maybe that's what he's saying here. But just for some of his other takes combined with this, because I was just putting together this video and I was like, oh yeah, I'll talk about that Dune thing. And then I saw in the article, like, by the way, I like Joker too. And I was like, this fucking guy. Like, so maybe, you know, he's given like 4 or 5 cooked movie opinions in 2 years and I've condensed them into one. So maybe I have like you know, I'm sure he has lots of good takes as well. There were some great movies on his list. But just seeing it all back to back, I was like, and also fucking, he liked Joker too. Of course he fucking did. So yeah. I don't know. Those are my thoughts. I just want to talk about what Quentin Tarantino's been yapping about lately. And part of the reason why I don't really fuck with Tarantino that much anymore. Again, I love his movies. I will always love his movies. Some of my favorite films. I don't think there's a film of his that I don't like. But yeah, just him as a person, as a personality, some of the stuff he says and how he goes about all this stuff. I don't know. I just find him to be unappealing and obnoxious generally. But yeah, I guess interesting to see someone who's made such great films talk in this way, give these takes. There's something interesting to it. And again, I guess, you know, you can appreciate he's shooting from the hip. Although again, Paul Dano, bro. What did he do, man? Paul Dano's really good. Anyway, those are my thoughts. What do you think about all this? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. While you're at it, be sure to subscribe, like this video. You can find my main channel, BHL Hudson, my podcast, The Poorly Planned Podcast. I'm on Instagram, BHL_Hudson, Letterboxd, Real BHL Hudson. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.